So this was last time we saw this video, which was a little bit funny, but I mean slightly appropriate for what we're thinking of, and how different people thought of Indian modernism and um, the British who wanted to leave their footprints back in India. How they talked about building the new capital complex that they were leaving behind in India. The ideas of the Indian elite compared to the British ruling people, how Indian kings or I mean whether it was the Bengali Bhadralok who started writing novels in English. The first novel was written in Bengal. A little bit before that, obviously, architecture is always the last to we. Although I mean, I know it's very funny. We always call architects the avant-garde, but architects are the last to accept certain things in some sense. All avant-garde movements start in writing, in literature, sometimes in philosophy. Then they go on to the arts, uh, maybe music. Music has a very different trajectory, generally speaking, compared to all the other arts. So after literature and uh, other, it goes to the visual arts, and then it's the architecture. But the architects are the ones who always call themselves the avant-garde. So it's a little bit of a paradox or a funny situation. We like to call ourselves we want to change the world, but we are the last people to reach the point where we start thinking about changing the world. So this is the Maharaja of Indore, who was a very modern fellow and built these kind of modern monuments called um, um, what was his name? Uh, I forgot. Eckhart Mutis, yes, sorry. And he built this very modern palace there in Indore, and at the same side, at the same time, in Shantiniketan, Rabindranath Tagore was trying to foster a different kind of architecture, a different kind of um, not a style, but a different way of looking at built form, right, and at the built world. Yeah. So this was something akin to looking back to tradition and creating this kind of timeless form, which felt very Indian, uh, which was part of our imagination, but was very intangible. It was not a literal translation of an Indianness, whereas Gandhi's translation was very literal in some sense. It was really a jopda, a village hut actually. So, but yeah, I mean, he had his own ways of doing things. Gandhiji was almost always, whether in his philosophy, whether in his personal behavior, or in his thinking, he was very literal in that sense that he wanted to translate things so that they were easily understandable. And I think one of the beauty of doing something like this, whether it's this kind of cross disciplinary study, is to see somebody performing different things and then to see the connections between that. That's very interesting. If you follow that, if you are able to make the connections, you can have some really important insights into how people think and function. So so this is again another example uh, of Gandhiji's Sevagram ashram and his kind of architecture that he wanted to establish. And so all of this is a prelude to this sense of identity that we are now starting to think of. We have, I mean, imagine 1947, India has just been born in some sense, and uh, there are people who are thinking of India as a new nation. I mean, India as a nation is obviously new. India as a civilization is very old, but as a singular nation, it is extremely new. It has just been formed, and it does not have any kind of homogeneous identity. It never had as a civilization, and civilizations don't. Nations can or may or may not choose to have one. And just today I read a wonderful quote actually by Partha Mittar. I think I should try and find it. It's perfect actually in our context. One second, let me see if I can find it. No, sorry, I'll try to look for it and I'll maybe send it to you because it was perfect in the sense he was talking about the difference between civilizations and nations, how civilizations have a very different way of looking at identity and nations have a very different way of looking at identity. So anyway, India is born just now, and this is Jawaharlal Nehru's famous uh, birth at the stroke of midnight speech, actually. Um, and now we really start thinking of India as a nation. India as a single, holistic, homogeneous um, identity, and as a constituency in some sense. So, so this is what happens. He starts going around, um, building a new India. He's talking about doing this everywhere, uh, all over the country. There is these are the temples of modern India, right? Uh, the young nation wants to build so much everywhere, and it is embracing modern technology, modern infrastructure. Um, we are Nehru is actively uh, like all nations at that time, which were throwing away the yoke of capitalism, of imperialism, uh, and coming into their own. They were starting to do things which the imperial masters did not do in some sense. Okay, the imperial countries did the kind of infrastructure development that was only beneficial to them, whereas now India has to think of itself and of its own people as one, not as one the master of the other, but everybody as an equal. And that's why the kind of developmental spree that Nehru started is very different. He goes on to start building these dams and all the streets, highways, new cities, new places. Everything is happening at the same time, and they are all trying to transcend this idea of a physical identity, but he's trying to change the nature of India's identity from a very rural um city, rural nation, where the identity was the bullock cart, maybe, or something like that. He's trying to change that to a very modern sense of an identity. And so he calls all of these guys also to India. There's obviously Pierre Jeanneret who comes first, uh, and then Corbusier comes after him. Uh, there is a whole batch of Indian architects or Indian sort of bureaucrats who start working with them, start building. I mean, I think the birth of Chandigarh is something that everybody knows of, so I will not go into that. But there are certain images that I want to show which are very nice and very important, which are not in the public domain very, or which are not found easily actually. So this is P.L. Verma, one of the chief architects of Chandigarh, and he was a part of the city development corporation and somebody who was always there actually throughout the project building of the city, and helped do most of the groundwork with Corbusier and Piaget. And okay, so these are all. This is Jeet Malhotra. These are all young Indian architects who start going and working with their. There's Sen Kapadia at this time. There are lots of other people that we know of now who were working with Corbusier. Doshi was there. Also, lots and lots of the Indian masters who were there with him. Maxwell Fry, another very important figure who was in Africa when we talked about Algiers, he was already in Algiers before he came to India. So he's also going around. He's a British architect um, who is again going around the world in some sense to propagate this sense of modern architecture. And this is the kind of way that it's still rural, no, in some sense. it's still a very simple kind of economy, and we are doing things by hand. So these master model makers are also building the model. That's a model of one of the capital complex buildings. You can see behind the base of another with the curved ground plane, the base of another model. Um, uh, so all of these models are being made by hand. These are models which are used to show the bureaucrats, show the prime minister maybe, and things like that. The designs are coming sometimes from Paris, sometimes from the local office in Chandigarh. They're all being assembled and the models are being built. This is the whole team of architects who was working in Chandigarh with Corbusier and Pierre at that time. So you can see these models, big models. One of the, and in fact, it's a very nice thing. The house behind uh, is one of those experimental houses that was built in Chandigarh at the time before the whole, when the complex was being planned. This is Pierre Gianare, who Gandhi Bhavan, who designed Gandhi Bhavan. This was built around the same time as the Capitol complex. It's a very different building, a little bit further away from the Capitol complex, but this was not Corbusier. This was only Gianare. And this is a very another kind of modernism. If you see, at the same time, okay, Chandigarh is being built, and there is a spurt of within Indian architecture. This is Charles Correa in 1958. Charles Correa was so if you see India of that time, it was the IAS officers, uh, there were three lobbies, not lobbies actually, uh, the bureaucrats who were very influential, and they were the intellectuals of India at that time, and they were the ones who were giving away projects. If you, I think next time we'll see some other work also which was being built around at this time. So Corbusier was invited to was asked to do this project. Corbusier, no, sorry, Korea, and Korea looked at India very differently. This was very early on uh, in his work, and so this he is trying to recreate the ethos of Gandhi, and if you can see the similarity, the difference between this work, the work at Chandigarh, and what this is, and this is where Korea is coming from. Korea is one of the few architects who understood the ethos of India extremely well, and he could build, I mean, it's a very rare thing for an architect at that time to accept the building culture in India. Okay, we were not very precise in that sense. We had master craftsmen, but when we are going to start building large buildings, then there was a problem of um, I wouldn't call it quality, but the kind of exacting standards that you would require to build a Chandigarh capital complex were not available to every architect in India. And Korea very uniquely could build around that. If you see all of Korea's buildings, they were all public buildings built by PWD departments in the country, and in spite of that, his architecture, in spite of the quality of of construction, his architecture was strong enough to transcend that, and that is something that Korea always understood. His sense of empathy uh, and understanding of the Indian ethos was fantastic. And from the beginning, he was like that. He didn't. I mean, if you compare Doshi and Korea, Doshi had a phase very early on in his architecture, which was very Corbusian. And then it was only later on when he built Sangath and Gandhi Labour Institute that he changed completely. And he left the Corbusian phase and he started doing something else. And then later on he also did something else. When he was designing NIFT in Delhi, he started uh, he was talking in a different language of architecture. Whereas for Korea, his architectural language always remained in the same sort of um, bandwidth. I mean, in some sense, he spoke the same language throughout his work. There were obviously refinements and changes that happened Because of technology, because of I mean, when you build in 1958 and then you build in 2005, there is going to be a difference. It's 50 years later, but those differences were not of the ethos or the understanding of architecture, but they were all superficial changes, which obviously he was able to accommodate within his architecture. That was the beauty of Korea's work, that he could very simply capture the essence of a place, the essence and the meaning of a project. So the question is, where does identity lie? When we look at these two primary examples or the earlier examples, identity, the way Jawaharlal Nehru was thinking of in the dams and the infrastructure, or the building of Chandigarh, which is this large project, or something like what Korea is doing, where does identity of a nation lie? 1 second. Okay. So this is again, yeah, I'm just trying to show. So you again, same thing. At the same time, other things are also happening. There is a hangover of the um, imperial legacy, when Vidhan Sabha in Bangalore is also being built at the same time. 1952, just almost the same time as the capital, thinking of the capital complex is being done. Um, the A few years after this, Gandhi Ashram is built, and this is very different. This is the Karnataka PWD, and you have to understand at that time the country also in a larger context, where the difference between the north and the south is also very, very, very prominent actually at that time. And there were people in southern India who were thinking very differently about language, about architecture, about nation, about their own identity. And that difference is manifest. The central government, the way they thought, and the local governments, the way they thought. And this is after India, after Bangladesh is free. It separates from Pakistan, um, and and Louis Khan from India is called to Bangladesh, to Dhaka, to build their new capital. Okay, this is Shere Bangla Nagar. This is one of the most magical uh, complexes that has ever been built. If you ever get a chance to visit Bangladesh for no other reason than to just go and see this, you should try and go there. This is in Dhaka, uh, and this is again something which is solely about identity. This is the big question, right? Is this the identity of Bangladesh? Is this the identity of East Pakistan at that time, or is it something that is only in Louis Khan's mind and he is giving it? Uh, I mean, it's very similar to any other Louis Khan project in that sense, right? So, how do we look at identity? How do architects look at identity? Because does it emanate from the place, from its ethos, from inside it, from its people? Is it given by somebody else? Like, let's say, I mean, Mumbai's identity is two things, right? You see two things as the identity of Mumbai: either the stock exchange building or Gateway of India. Now, both of these things, the stock exchange obviously seems much more relevant in the sense that Bombay is called the financial capital of India, things like that. Whether the building matches that identity or not, that is a different question. Gateway of India is again something, an imposed monument, similar to this building. Both are imposed monuments. One is imposed by an imperialist ruler, whereas this is by a elected government. In both cases, the question of identity is completely open. There is no clarity, or there is no one way of thinking about identity. Whereas, if you really think about the question of identity, this is something that was, in some sense, a Dravidian shift in architecture. Not an imperial architecture, not Gothic, Corinthian, not Greek, not Roman, not something derived from the Western culture, but something that was in between both. Something, there was a derivation of Dravidian ethos. There is an understanding of that. The plan, maybe the party, the way the organization may have changed because of the requirements of the palace, the requirements of the state government and the state working. But there is a an attempt to capture a Dravidian identity which is different from a pan-Indian identity. Right? So this is something that maybe comes from its history and comes from its background. This does not. This comes from outside. It's an alien spaceship which has landed in Dhaka. But it has still become synonymous with Dhaka. Right? Now, I mean, I don't know whether anybody sees it or not, but I don't see any relevance to Bangladesh here or to Dhaka here. It is beautiful. I've walked these staircases and I've been inside, but it does not remind you of Bangladesh. It does not evoke the idea of Dhaka of that country. It is still beautiful. So the question is, what are we? What does where does identity lie, or is it the job of architecture to talk about identity? Uh, so moving on, this is IGNCA, which is now being demolished by one of the leading architects of India, and this was one of the most important competitions that was held in India. Um, where IGNC, the Indira Gandhi National Culture Center of Arts, and what happened was it was an international competition. They had 103 or 110 entries. There's a whole book in the library. Next time you ever go to the library, you should look it up. All entries with large prints are shown in the book, are presented in the book. Um, and the thing is, Ralph Lerner, who was then the dean of Rice University in Houston, in the US, he won the project. He won the competition. And our own Gautam Bhatia came second. This is the winning entry. And this is the project by Gautam Bhatia, which was the second winning entry. And what happened was there was a big hue and cry. There was an opposition to the winning entry by Gautam Bhatia, by mainly Gautam Bhatia, and there was a big controversy over the project. It has still now not been fully built as per the winning entry. It has only been partly built and partly functional till now, and now it's already being demolished. But the thing is, what Gautam Bhatia was propagating or was asking, the question: how does this respond to an Indian identity and a national center of arts? And he wrote a lot about it. That this is as superficial as Herbert Baker and Edwin Lutyens to making the Capitol complex and pasting a few chhatris on top of the buildings. So the way Gautam Bhatia looked at it was that it was very superficial and did not, in fact, perform as per the nature of the brief given. In spite of that, it was a winning entry, so that's why he was against it. And his own entry was much more philosophically stronger in the way he talked about the city and the nation and the country and its background. So he's also one of the few architects who understands the ethos of the country in a way. And you should read his Punjabi Baroque, the book Punjabi Baroque. It's a very old and maybe slightly dated now, but when we were studying, it was extremely prescient. 25 years back, when the first lipstick building and the first pedimented building started appearing in Bombay and all over the country, it was amazing how brutally honest that book was. And now we have seen so much of it that it won't surprise us now. But at that time, 25 years back when the book came, I don't know exactly the date, but it was extremely important for us at that time to read it. And he talks about about hidden things, about rivers and about ghats and about slight irregularity in the way things develop, and for him that was important, whereas for Ralph Lerner it was a very formal Indianness that was important. And it was more superficial, his imposition of an Indianness on top of the building. And that was the big difference between the two entries. And I think, I mean, yeah, you should try and look at it a little bit more. This is Raj Rewal, Hall of Nations 1972. I'm showing you lots of different important buildings because they were all, for all architects working at this time and all architects working on public buildings or large projects, the question of a national identity was preeminent. We to in today's time, when somebody is designing a project, you're not thinking of India anymore as a nation, as a way of developing an Indian identity, because the concerns of today's are very different than the concerns of 1960s and 70s. In the 60s and 70s, this was very important. We were always grappling with this sense of Indian identity. And so at that time, all buildings always discuss stuff like this. This is Bharat Bhavan, Charles Korea again, a large national, state government assembly building. This is Vasant and Revati Kamath much later actually. There's an article I've written on this also, which was anyway. But yeah, this is the tribal museum in Bhopal. This is again very literal, right? Whereas this is not literal. This is absolutely not literal in the sense of translating an Indianness to here. This is a very literal translation of tribal identity on top of a building, both in terms of its construction and in terms of its visual nature, visual language that it employs. So again, the question is, every building, every photograph is posing a question to you guys. Is this appropriate when you are talking about a tribal identity? Or is this appropriate when you're talking about a state level identity, the assembly building of the state of Madhya Pradesh? Does this work for Bhopal, for a place which is the birthplace of, which is like 150 kilometers from Sanchi Stupa, or from Beda Ghat, or from Indore? No, this is, what does it mean to build a building like this? And this is Bhopal. This is also Bhopal, right? And two architects with widely different ways of looking at things. And this is obviously Sangat Doshi reinventing himself completely. After the hangover of the Corbusian and the Lacanian phase, Doshi comes around and then he starts talking about an Indian identity. And that's why he invented, or he didn't invent it obviously, but he reinvented for himself the idea of the wall, the idea of getting light in from the roof, and the idea of the high roof, the double height space, the upper space, which also could be used when you do a vault. So, that's, I think I am done today. This was short actually, but I think it's good. So again, every class, I mean every presentation ends with this history croisi, which is this idea of cross histories. Okay, every talk is trying to put together these contrasting histories together. When you look at histories as different strands of ideas and of things coming together and meeting together, that is when you really understand history. Okay.
All,
Yeah.
also one thing, it's about, Nimish, what I felt today,
Uh-huh.
it's about these changing identities. Like everyone comes and kind of talks about their whole idea of identity. Like you said,
Correct.
after the overwhelming phase of Corbusier, I would not even say Khan, I would just say Corbusier. Then
Yeah,
Doshi,
yeah.
and Korea is a bit of sideline, but because I don't know, because of the fact that though she worked with Corbusier also, but Korea also had a very different and a very unusual
Trajectory.
sense of what identity is.
Right.
And also, when you are showing this Bhopal museum, so this Manav Sangrahalaya, I don't remember the name of the architect, but Manav Sangrahalaya, if we see that building, it's again a very unique building. Though the it's a museum, it's a museum of humankind. That's what it is. But
Okay.
the way again it kind of deals with the whole terrain. I mean, something that Bharat Bhavan has already kind of or Bharat Bhavan has imagined, like, respecting the terrain, the idea of non-building, and whatever. That was actually, I feel, was already addressed in Manav Sangrahalaya. I don't remember the
Okay.
architect of Manav Sangrahalaya, but Manav Sangrahalaya is a building which is before Bharat Bhavan. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
In
Manas,
Bhopal only?
yeah. So Bhopal
Okay.
only. Yes, it's in Bhopal
Okay.
only.
I'm not. Hmm.
It's
Funny, I've
a
been to Bhopal 3, 4 times. I've never seen that.
no. It's a very unique building,
Okay.
and it has these. Yeah, one second. It's Indira Gandhi Rashtriya Manav Sangrahalaya. Maybe you know
Yeah,
it.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that, but I don't know the architect.
Yeah, I also don't know the architect, but the way that has also dealt with this whole idea of campus planning and what we see in Kanvinde's and Doshi's work, that all has been already captured in this. So I feel that this building
Okay.
is a very kind of ig- uh, a very ignored building. I feel, but it's a very important one.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
I should try to find out. I have not seen this. I mean, I'm seeing it now.
Yeah.
Shamla Hills, Bhopal. Okay.
Yes. It's
Next
near
time,
Bharat Bhavan only. I feel. I think. Yeah, because it's near the Bada Talab. I feel
near the
the Bada Talab.
Bada Talab. Okay. Okay. Okay.
The promenade, the main promenade of the Bada Talab, I think it's near that. I think it's opposite Bharat Bhavan. Not sure.
Hmm.
And
No, no
also,
idea.
I also tried to search, but the Jahanama Palace hotel that is there in Bhopal,
Hmm. Hmm.
it was a
Hmm.
palace. Then it was kind of, now it's converted into a royal. It's in a hotel. But even
Okay.
the extension to that and the retrofitting of that was done by Korea, and the extension is also done in a certain kind of way which try to amalgamate both. I tried to find out the
Okay.
images. I don't have my personal images right now with me, but even the way that Jahanuma is crafted and Korea has built
Hmm.
the extension part of it, that also kind of exhibits the way what was going on during that time, and that we actually can see the traces that what kind of Korea has and comes brings his ideas, and kind of what is the uh, this whole sense of Indianness they are talking about, and
Okay.
so
Okay.
all these different. So I think it will be interesting even to see. I actually wanted to add Jahanuma in the institutional buildings, but I was not getting
Huh.
the extension part. But I was not getting the plans of it. I searched for the plans of it, but I was not getting the information myself. So I thought better exclude it. But
Yeah. Okay.
there are
No,
three.
if it is like this, we should add it to the presentation also, maybe, or make it as a part of the case study, because I think the case
Like,
study will be more interesting the more we get these varied kind of architectural projects in
yeah.
that.
Surprisingly, Madhya Pradesh has very important, like
There's a
Indore.
lot of, yes, yes, yes.
Indore and Bhopal also has a lot of interesting buildings which kind of exhibits the new modern, the new India, emerging new India. That's
I think as a state government, they were the most progressive for a short period of time in terms of building new architecture, which other states like Maharashtra has a terrible legacy of building public buildings or government architecture.
yeah,
And very few other states. Gujarat has some sense of what a the state level architecture or a government. I don't know how do you say it. Government. Patronized architecture has to be, but very few states like Bhopal has, Delhi has
yeah,
slightly larger concentration of better public buildings, but very few other states in India have.
yeah. They don't have. But anyone else? So has anyone come across such kind of a structure which we actually, because right now only I realized when I was searching for the buildings, I realized about Jahannama. Till all these years, I never did realize
Okay.
that it was something. But when we were having this discussion and when I was searching for the buildings, then I realized there are very good Romi Khosla buildings also,
Yeah.
which actually have added. There are some quite a modern buildings. Unfortunately, I don't have the file in the system. Or else I would have right now projected and we could have discussed even the
We could have
buildings.
discussed those. Yeah, we could
The
have done
different
that.
system I have. Yeah.
Mm. But I think, see, you have to take this as a glimpse of what is possible, because I'm sure there are so many other projects that we can show and discuss. I think this is just giving you guys, all of you, the students. I'm not talking only to Rutika. I'm talking to all 60 of you who are here. I hope you understand that it's not just me and Rutika having a discussion,
Yeah.
but it's all of you. That this is just to give you a glimpse of what you need to start thinking of. If you
Hmm.
want to be good architects, if you want to think about architecture at this scale, at this level, and not just your project and your thesis and your work, then I think it's very important that you open your eyes to stuff like this. And ultimately, we can't tell you everything. You will find, even today. I mean, like Rutika is telling me about buildings that I have no idea of, and you will always continuously discover new things and learn new things. At any age, you learn things. So. It is not about us knowing things that we are telling you something. We are just starting a discussion about this, and maybe you will come up with an idea that we would not have thought of, or you can show us a building and talk about it in a way that we have never thought about. So I think it's important for this to be a just a beginning or a springing point for you to really start thinking of how you go forward, because ultimately all of this will come into your work. When you start doing your work, all of these things will be part of it.
True.
Should we have someone talk about it, or?
See, today's presentation was actually extension of what was introduced yesterday. So we are
Yes,
starting a
it is actually a single presentation.
yeah.
Last time we didn't do it longer because I was not well and all that. Otherwise we could have finished it in one class only.
Yeah. So now we are actually seeing at India, like only talking
Yeah.
about India and what are the different. So it can be anything. It might happen that you might be in a city wherein we actually think. So this whole idea of modern heritage, that it started and it actually brought into limelight all these different buildings. Like for instance, even one more building I remember. So in Nagpur, there is a building which was that there's a hostel actually which is designed by Otto Koenigsberg. It was not at
Hmm.
all known when we actually dug into different archives, and we were what we were doing. We were kind of making a presentation for 25 years of our college, and the college
Okay.
hostel block. It turns out that it was designed by Koenigsberg. So we never knew that. Even for that matter, some of the buildings in the National Institute of Nagpur. So some of the
Hmm.
buildings there, they are kind of resonate with that. We are again trying to think who was the architect, trying to kind of go and see the details, but we couldn't find that. But one building we found out it was by Coinsburg. We actually even sent it to the list, but it was not. It is still in the process. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I came here, so I don't know what's now happening there.
Okay. 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 Okay.
But that's how even in our own cities there are these certain buildings which might not be so celebrated, but they
But
actually
are important.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. So I think also the reading now I'll also upload that book that you gave me, that Mickey Desai one. I think that one is
Ha.
an important book for
That
them.
one can be. Yeah.
I'll upload that today itself. Like till 4 o'clock you will get. I'll reach home in half an hour and you will get it. Yeah. Anyone
So.
else?
My name is Rutika. So
Hi.
when you talked about the Louis Khan master work in Bangladesh, Dhaka. So when you tell
Ah.
ki this is like this feels alien to you, and like even when it was made, nothing of that sort happened in Bangladesh. But now there's a wave of Bangladeshi architects like Marina Dabbasum, Keshav Chaudhary, even
Hmm.
Rafiq Azam for that matter, who are building houses and
Rashid. Yeah.
complexes in
Hmm.
that way. When still projects are coming up, like exposed brick, moving light, and all the public places, the war museum and all, they all come up to being. So the can we say that Louis Khan kind of had an influence of shaping what the current scenario is? Like तभी नहीं था, but now can you say that?
No, of course we can. Of course, and he has. They have a hand. The fact that Corbusier came here changed the nature of Indian architecture and the way, because Louis Khan went to Bangladesh, it changed the whole route of Bangladeshi architecture. The thing is, the question is not about his influence. His influence is is undoubtable, and his influence in the work of the very good architects who are working in Bangladesh is also undoubtable. That is not the question. The question is, in respect to that particular project, which is the National Assembly, the Parliament complex, right? And the idea of any parliament complex in the world is to reflect a sense of that nation, of the ethos of that nation, of the values of that nation, of whatever it is that they you relate to. And the question that I'm asking in the larger context, see, we're not talking particularly about the quality of his architecture. And I have told you that I have seen it personally and it's fantastic. There's nothing in the world like that place. But the question is, how does it respond to its primary motive, which is representing Bangladesh? And yes, you're right. Every monument by its nature, whether it's alien or not, becomes a part of the city. Like, I mean, how is the Gateway of India an identity of Bombay? It has nothing of Bombay in it, right? It has nothing of, at the time it was built, uh, there was literally no architecture in Bombay except for the Koli architecture in the fishing villages of Bombay. As a local architecture, the British had already built some buildings in fort, but otherwise, if you look at local architecture, there was nothing in Bombay around that time, right? So, or nothing before that. I mean, which you could use as a historical background. I mean, you could have, if somebody else was there, they could have looked at the capital, the medieval capital of Sopara. They could have looked at Thane and other historical kingdoms in India, in and around Bombay. Use that as an inspiration and built a new kind of gateway. We could have done that. Or the forts that Shivaji built around here, maybe. All of that could have happened. But what did the British do? They built a gateway in a style, in a very Victorian style. Same way, what did Louis Khan do? He built a complex in his own style, in the way he would build, irrespective of whether he is in India, in Bangladesh, or in China, or in the US, or anywhere else, or in Israel, or anywhere else in the world. That is the question.
Yeah.
We are not debating the quality of the architecture.
Also, I believe that Louis Kahn and Corbusier, though Corbusier said, but I don't think so. Corbusier ever followed this whole notion of regionalism or critical regionalism. They had their own set of, principles, this set of ways they used to design, and then that's how the designing was made. Similar was with Kahn. Even if you're talking about brick being the local material and then kind of talking about different abilities of it and exploring it more, but if you see the way even Khan's work, if you just see all across, it kind of has the same kind of ethos that is there with respect to the projects that he's building, right?
He's
But
building in Philadelphia with
yeah.
exposed brick, and he's building in Ahmedabad with exposed brick. It doesn't make any sense.
So, I mean, everyone has their own, set notions of a kind of, building. So, I agree to you, wherein Shantanu, you said that Khan has actually set up the identity for Bangladesh, which we have right now. And also, if you go back to that particular era and you research about the maybe the socio and political conditions, many times this architecture, if I consider it as an artwork, these artworks were basically used for these political contestations. Okay, so we never, so obviously in India also it has happened and it is happening right now also, though on a very 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 pastiche scale, I would say, but still it is happening. Okay, but so so that's how I think you are correct in a way, wherein you said that Khan has already set up this whole this whole paradigm of what architecture and how an architecture should be, I think, in Bangladesh, because I'm not sure, but I have never come across a very regional, what is regional architecture in Bangladesh. I actually don't know. I've not seen rather.
Yeah.
So,
In the next class, we will talk about that. We'll talk about Kenneth Frampton also and lots of other architects who did other stuff, in a regionalist sense also. So we have a talk. I don't know how much time or how many classes. I mean, that's why I was talking to you about that, because there are a couple of topics that I want to touch upon. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So all of this immediately, see, that's the idea, that each talk is a continuation in some sense. The next one will respond to some of these questions also, but take the discussion in a different direction also. So each one is a starting point of different discussion. Anybody else questions?
I think even Nemish, the other day we started with the Miro board discussion. Na, some of the groups are remaining. That also will
Acha,
happen.
okay, yeah, that also we have to do. When do we have time for all?
When we have the discussion with the other faculty who is coming here,
Okay,
let's
yeah,
pull in.
let's
And
do
also
that.
I was thinking that once we should also see that what if whenever they get the, I mean, building, and they get it ki
Hmm.
kya hai kya nahi, I think because we have also, I mean, that was a mistake from my side. I couldn't see that कि वो अपलोड ही नहीं हुआ है. मुझे लगा आई वाज टुडे आई एम
हाँ.
गोइंग टू आस्क देम कि सबको बिल्डिंग का सब मिल रहा है नहीं मिल रहा है क्या है.
No, so what we can do? Can we ask them? Can you guys select your building in groups of two? They have to select in groups of two, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And start making the base drawing. Somebody do the base blog or website, whatever you're doing, and in let's give them a deadline for a first cut, no? So we can at least see, because that we can see offline also, whenever at night
Yeah.
I'm browsing or something. I can see and I can start posting comments to to a group or something which they can start implementing.
Okay.
So is there
Okay.
a way we can set up a deadline for
I,
them that okay, in
maybe
a week they just huh,
I'll just see how we can break it through stages, because maybe we can do it in a way wherein they just upload it somewhere and we can see it whenever we want, so that we have any
yeah,
specific comments. I was thinking the blog thingy we can have it a bit later once they are
okay.
done with their main submissions, and so that we will have a team who will dedicatedly work on that. But before that, we'll
So
have
we
a
should no
and
no we should also start that team to just design the blog, no, basically.
yeah, okay. No, Nimish left. Anyway, sorry guys, this is my fault. I couldn't see that it is not uploaded. I'll go home and maybe upload it till 4 o'clock. So
Someone
today,
removed from the meeting.
sorry.
Someone removed me from the meeting.
Uh, okay. I
No,
have
no,
to
I'm
change
back.
the
I
rights. I have to change the right. I have to learn that. I don't
changing.
know how to
Yeah,
do that.
they
Okay.
didn't
Anyway.
like what I was saying. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe we can discuss that. First, today, let me just give them so that today only they can choose.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
each category has 20 options. I think only one has 10 to 12 options, because housing I was not able to find many. So
That's
they have
okay.
lot of buildings. Ideally, to 10 ही चाहिए. We need 40, but I think there are almost 60 to 70 buildings, so they can see that. We have
Yeah.
included many modern buildings also, like the workshop building at Sept. That also has a very uh,
Okay.
different way that there's a whole lot of information available of that. Library, it was done, so I have not included library, but there are a
Hmm.
lot of buildings that there is this Sai Mandir which is in Hyderabad, which is done in a very uh, very contemporary way. The
Okay.
major
Okay.
part, that is by, I don't remember the architect's name, but the tectonics or the technology is something that is the main part of it, and the
Okay.
way the bricks are used and the shikara. I think you must have seen that project, Nimish.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
yeah. Yeah, I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
So
So there
good. So,
different buildings we have included. You kind of pick your building, and next
hmm.
class we will see that we'll have last half an hour, so everyone could just update us about they're getting you have started rasterizing and whatever, and I'll also update you about how you can upload it, where you can upload it, so that we can start seeing it.
Seeing it, yes. No, and I think what I was trying to say is that if we have a team of people who can run the blog
Yeah,
or uh, on WordPress, because I think WordPress is very simple. So
it's
maybe we assign 2 or 3 people to do the background of it, so that once they can decide what format and what size each image they will want.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if they can do that, then every group knows that we have to do a 256 by 256 pixel image of the plan and this size of the section and this size of the elevation. So then it becomes very easy that they don't do something and then they end up redoing it for the uploading again separately.
Okay, sure. ठीक है.
So I mean, we should we
Yeah,
assign somebody?
Mohit is asking something.
Okay,
Yeah,
Mohit.
can't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, can we do an Instagram account instead of a blog? Like then the posting thing will be common for everyone, even the format and even the caption. So it'll be easier to handle as well.
Okay, Instagram is a good idea, but our kind of intent is to make it more formal, which we can, in future, your juniors batches can also add to it, and we can put it as one of a very kind of archived assembly on our website. So rather than making it that way, maybe you can decide an Instagram format that we will have all the images in square. That's it. So
Hmm.
that's what he's saying, that you decide a particular. We are okay with whatever format you decide. I'll send the Supra order link. I think. Did you see that? I mean, did you see that website or not? That's also there on Instagram. So you see the way that blog is built. We don't mind even if we build it the same way.
Yeah, almost the same is fine. See, Mohit, the thing is, we can do an Instagram as an addition to the blog or the WordPress site, because the WordPress site, what we are assuming is that over a period of 5 6 years, we have a group of 40 projects that were done last year also, and you are going to do 40 projects. Then the next year we will do 40 projects. Over a period of time, the college will have a bank of Indian projects which are already documented and easily available to all students to use as analytical drawings, to use as documentation. Instagram remains only visual. As a phone may you can see, but when you put it on a website with downloadable formats, then we can reuse them. Somebody in the second year or somebody in the thesis wants that project, they can uh, take those slides that you have posted and use them as their base drawings for analytical drawings, for understanding, building typologies, for understanding grids, structures, in lots of other stuff that is required for analysis for buildings. So this is more of an educational tool. If it was just an exercise to grade you, then I don't mind an Instagram thing. But it is something that we want for posterity also, for future also, to add on to it. All every year we will continue adding on to it.
Okay, okay.
So can we have at least a team of 2 to 3 people who will just design the basic structure of our blog? I mean, you guys can discuss and give us the names later. That's not a problem. And then the detailing could be done later after
Hmm.
we are done with our main submissions, and you can do it in your holidays. Okay. Okay. I
Okay.
think they'll discuss it and they'll
Yeah.
give it. So tomorrow, guys, at 6:30. Okay, 6:30 to 7:30. I think, Nimish.
Around 1.5 hours, 6:30 to let's say 8 o'clock maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So please keep your questions also ready. Someone of you has actually messaged me, Nimish. I was not. I
Hmm.
missed the message once, twice, I think. That what are the dates that one should put for internship?
Okay,
And
yes. Arant also asked me.
yeah,
It is actually officially there is no date. It is after Diwali, after your seventh semester gets over, the minimum time is 100 days or 16 weeks. Either one is fine.
yeah.
100 days is less than 16 weeks, but generally if you do 16 weeks, that is 4 months. Uh, with the Saturday, Sunday off, it becomes less. That is actually less than 100 days. So you can decide what you want to show. And I think there is an official Mumbai University document which I have for the 9 semester syllabus, which means the technical requirements for the professional practice, which I will share tomorrow with the class. which is not very important. But one more thing that you should understand is most offices will ask you for 6 months.
Hmm.
Right. So like in my office, we don't allow interns less than 6 months. Even if you need minimum 16 weeks, 4 months is too less for our share, our office. So then we will make sure that students commit to 6 months complete internship. You don't get, because you actually technically you have time of 6 months
Correct.
from after Diwali, which after Diwali you don't have classes anymore. So you can start your internship on 15th of November. So November, December, January, February, March, April. 15th April tak kiya, so you get 6 months. And your classes start directly in May end or June first week, right? So you have a full 6 months.
Okay, yeah, because I received this message twice, and I actually once I
No,
missed,
no,
and then I was like, I was supposed to call you, ask you, and then I. So yeah, I mean, I don't
Aman
remember.
also messaged me. I am also supposed to respond to him. I told him. So I was talking to Rohan also that to find out what is, if there is any other university guideline that we have. But no, we don't have any other university guideline. It is 16 days, 16 weeks or 100 days. Either one. There is no official start or completion date. It is within your ninth semester or any time you can do it.
Okay, okay, ठीक है. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, then fine.
Done.
Any more question? Please tomorrow be there. We know it's bit off timing from our classes, but we couldn't find any time to. I mean, which was
So
very
yeah.
difficult for us to after the accommodated in the week. So yeah. So okay, then see you tomorrow at 6:30. We can meet here in this channel only.
Same channel, yes, yes, yes. And we'll invite the 10 or 12 students from the fifth year also on this channel, right? We'll send Arun the invitation and he can
I'll just
forward it to
create
that
a
group.
meeting and share the invite that I can.
Okay, yes, perfect, perfect.
Okay, sure.
Okay, chalo,
Okay.
bye bye.
And please also